Good morning and hello. I hope you're all enjoying a splendid Friday morning, and I am happy to welcome you to a webinar about the operation of a smart district on the example of Bedburg and the first insights and learnings we were able to obtain from it. My name is Jan Bergholz, and I am working here at gridX as a technical project manager, overlooking and managing the smart cloud project we will talk to you about today in greater detail. Now, before I dive into that, I want to first give you an overview about the talking points of today. As I said before, I will first give you an overview about us, gridX, introducing the Xenon platform, and then giving you a brief overview about the smart cloud project. Before I hand over to Sarah Henn of the RWTH, introducing the simulations we have conducted about this project and the first part, the offline simulations, before my colleague Emmeline George will take over to take a deeper dive into the online simulations. Now, first off, gridX. We, if you're not aware, are a startup founded in 2016 with, at the moment, around 65 employees and offices in both Aachen and Munich. Since our start, we handled an energy amount of about 18 gigawatt hours and connect to more than 10,000 devices. We supported OEMs in the range of greater than 30. How we do this, I will show you now on the following slides when I introduce the Xenon platform. In this, we connect many different kinds of distributed energy resources or appliances like charging stations, heat pumps, turbine blades, or photovoltaic units through either our edge device, the grid box, or directly, if the appliance allows, to our Xenon platform, a centralized hub with which we can connect a multitude of different partners to the devices directly and realizing with them, for them, different use cases. Many of them pictured here, like for example, the management of smart districts, smart charging solutions, or future energy homes, providing energy analytics, or allowing grid operations, as well as trading off the flexibilities that we connect to, or forming energy communities. We do this in one of two ways, either enabling our partners to directly connect their logic, their architecture of algorithms to the assets through our platform with the help of our API, or with many pre-built modules that allow a multitude of functions pictured here on the following slide. Those can be divided roughly into three overarching components, either optimization, access, or extension. I won't go into detail about all these different modules, but if you have questions about them, we can address them afterwards. My main focus today, as I said before, is the Smart Cloud project. And here, I want to show you what that actually is. The Smart Cloud project is the idea, or is based on the idea, to introduce smart districts in a real-world environment, namely districts in Essen, Bedburg, and Kaisersesch, with all three different urban types, ranging from urban environments, small towns, or industrial quarters. This project is being conducted, of course, not just by gridX, but many different partners, among them E.ON, Fissmann, the RWTH Aachen, who will also speak to you today, and Hydrogenius, and it is funded by the PTJ as well as the BNPE. As I said before, the three different quarters have different focus, Essen being a mixed region with high population density and a focus on living and commercial environments, while Bedburg, a small town, has a focus on living and society, with assets ranging from heat pumps to charging stations, batteries, or PV units, and a turbine that is entirely built for this project, for this city. Kaisersesch, on the other hand, is an industrial quarter for which we will have, or for which actually at the moment being built, is a hydrogen infrastructure to test the impact of hydrogen and the possibilities of hydrogen on the energy market, as well as for the optimization within the quarter. And what you see here is the general architecture of the whole system, because we cannot just see the quarters individually, but, and this is the specialty of the SmartQuad project, also the connection and thereby the ability to exchange energy between the different quarters. If, for example, Bedburg, pictured here on the left, produces more energy due to its currently planned 7.4 megawatts turbine, this energy can be virtually transferred to the other quarters, Kaisersesch or Essen, where it can either be used to charge or to charge local batteries or produce hydrogen for future energy storage. And then, of course, we have within the quarters the potential to have a multitude of smaller clusters, either individual houses, factories, or other kinds of clusters like charging stations, that in their own might need to be optimized. Then, of course, above the quarters, we have our Xenon platform that I previously introduced. And through this Xenon platform, within this project, we connect to many different parties to realize different use cases. Like, for example, the visualization. You can see here a brief overview on the left, as well as the realization of a cascaded control interface or system through the combination of two distinctive EMS or energy management systems. One of which is being provided by the RWTH, which is a forecast-based energy management system with stochastic approximations that sends us control commands or thresholds that we realize within the quarters through our rule-based algorithms, thereby combining the forecast-based system of RWTH's algorithm with our stable and fast algorithm. Another instance is the connection to a VPP that potentially connects the flexibilities within the districts to the general energy market, and of course, data storage on third parties. Now, what you see on the next slide is a rough overview, although it might be a little bit overwhelming in the beginning, a rough overview of the Bedburg quarter and the general setup within it from an ICT, information and communication technology perspective. Here we have in the center, roughly speaking, our local control unit, the grid box, which connects via a digital quarter management system or internal network within the quarter to all the different devices that have to be managed within the quarter. Those are, of course, the 130 households and the devices within, which might be decentralized PV units that the homeowners might want to install on their roofs, as well as charging stations that, with the rise of electromobility, will become more and more prominent, even also in urban environments. Then we have, of course, centralized devices like centralized PV units, batteries for peak power shaving, as well as charging stations and the aforementioned turbine, as well as the central grid connection point. Those are, though, just the electricity side of things. We also control heating. Those are central heat pumps, as well as heat storage devices and decentralized heat pumps and storage devices that work together to create an optimized system within the quarter on their own, of course, but in addition, with the help of the optimization algorithms provided by XNet, a partner company that we connect to locally and transmit and receive control commands and data within the quarter, but also from the RWTH to optimize the quarter even further. Now, how that looks like and what kind of results have been achieved there thus far and in the simulations, I hand over to Ms. Sarah Henn from the RWTH. Now.
Yeah, thank you, Jan, for the kind introduction. My name is Sarah Henn. I'm from RWTH Aachen University, where I'm working at the Institute of Energy Efficiency and Indoor Climate. In my presentation today, I would like to show you the offline simulations we did in the Smart Grid project. And within this project, we as a university are pursuing several research questions. So in detail, we develop tools for an easy generation of energy demand profiles. We want to quantify the saving potentials of the 3 districts. We develop algorithms for optimal control. And later, we also want to show the systemic synergies between the 3 districts and, of course, scale it all up. Today, I would like to talk about the first 3 points. Therefore, let's look into the Bedburg energy system together. Jan already also already showed a little bit of it, so I will go fastly over it. There are the private households, so 113 buildings depicted here on the left side. Every building has a domestic hot water heat pump. It might have a private PV. It might have a private EV. And moreover, there are there's PV on the multifamily houses. There are public charging stations, a big wind turbine, and within the central energy hub, there's a huge battery installed and a central heat pump, which is ground sourced and wastewater sourced and feeds in heat and cold into a local heating network. Yeah, this is how the energy system in Bedburg will look like. And as Bedburg is a new construction district, so right now there's no historic data. And as state of the art in building in early planning stages, there are just some values given, like annual values of energy demand or the estimated primary energy consumption. But as we aim to do, to look into operation and into operation of a system with highly fluctuating renewable energies, we need to have profiles. We need to have energy demand profiles with a higher resolution. And this was one of our tasks in this project, to simulate this data. And there were a lot of profiles we had to simulate. So you can imagine there's the heating and cooling demand of the houses, the electricity demand, then the electricity generation of PV and of wind power, the charging demand of the public charging stations, and also the extraction potential from ground and wastewater. And we used our tools for doing this, and one of our tools is a tool for setting up a building simulation. And as I said, there might be undefined parameters and missing details. So, for example, what materials will be used, or what are the U values after renovation of a building. And our idea was that we can use archetype buildings to estimate these properties, and then in the end get a dynamic physical model with minimum input parameters. For example, the input parameters we need for our open source tool are the building usage, the construction year, the area of the building, and the number of floors. If you can put in more optional input as wall structures and usage zones, internal loans, and whatever data you have. And the tool then will use an internal database in order to find all the other properties of the archetype buildings, and then give back a building model according to VDE 6007, which you can then simulate. We did this in Bedburg, and in Bedburg we identified 5 different building types, so 2 multi and 3 single-family houses, and we calculated the energy demands under the assumption that the target temperature for heating in the rooms is 21 degrees, and the target temperature for cooling is 26 degrees. And you can see the profiles on the right side here, and what you can see are the typical heating periods, the typical cooling periods, but also there are periods without any energy demand, thermal energy demand. The profiles here have an hourly resolution, as the data we used was weather data with an hourly resolution. Yeah, this was an example for a physical model. We also use stochastic model, for example, for electricity profile generation. And as you can imagine electricity profiles are highly dependent from user behavior. So, but in the beginning, you don't know the individual user behavior or the equipment is unknown. Thus, we said, okay, maybe we can use probability distribution-based dependencies. So, for example, what's the probability that somebody is at home at 7? And what's the probability that he is at home at 8 when he was at home at 7? So, and with these probabilities, we then in the end managed to generate electricity profiles for single buildings. To do it first, we also need just minimal input, so just the number of inhabitants and the building time. And if you have more input, you can put it in optionally. So scaling factors, for example, you know the annual energy demand of the house or of the district. And if you have info of the equipment, you can also put it in. And then with our open source tools, you are able to generate the electricity profile for single households. Yeah, these were two examples how we simulated the energy demand. And right now we did it perfect foresight, but in the end in Bedburg, when we start to get data and we start to monitor data, we will be able to improve our models and also later use them for forecasts. Yeah, now I want to talk about the energy saving potentials. We investigated, and when I talk about energy saving potentials, I also have to talk about flexibilities, as they give us the potential to shift energy and to shape the peaks. And for example, in Bedburg, there's the central battery who give us the potential to maximize self-consumption. The EVs can charge grid reactive, and maybe we can connect all the decentral heat pumps in order to create something like a pool intelligence. Yeah, we conducted some studies there, and in one study we did a sizing and scheduling study of the battery. We used our mixed integer linear program models for this, and assumed perfect foresight and used 15 minutes data. The objective in this study was to maximize self-consumption, and you can see the results on the bottom left. The emissions for the different capacities of the battery we investigated in red, and the self-sufficiency rate in gray. And what you can see that with a bigger battery, we are of course able to save CO2, but this is also a degressive curve. And also for the self-sufficiency, there's a degressive increase in the self-sufficiency level. So in the end, in Bedburg, a battery of 300 kilowatt hours will be installed, and what we can see with our simulation is that with this size, we are able to reduce CO2 emissions by 50% and can reach a self-sufficiency level of 94%. Another study we conducted for, let's say, future scenarios. So we assumed that there will be 50 EVs in Bedburg. So every third household will have a PV, and we used the same model for doing this study. And our objective of the model was to minimize carbon emissions. And we simulated two operations of the EV. So in red, we have the demand-led operation, so every EV starts charging as soon as it is plugged in. And in blue, we have the emission optimized operation of the EVs. And in yellow, you can see the wind electricity generation. And what you notice is that in the emission optimized case, the EVs shift their charging times into times with high wind electricity generation, and in times with low wind electricity generation, they avoid charging if possible. And looking at the numbers, we found that with these 50 EVs, we can reach a CO2 reduction in the whole district by 9.5%. And in this study, you see that the peaks are higher in the emission optimized operation. This is because, yeah, of course, all the PVs want to charge in times with high wind electricity generation. But in other studies we conducted, we also see significant peak reduction potentials in EV charging. Talking about PV charging, we also, talking about peak shaving, we also conducted another study where we scheduled the decentral heat pumps, and we scheduled them as a pool all together. And again, used the mixed integer linear program, and our objective was the peak power minimization. And on the left, you can see the load duration curve of the heat pumps, and in red, there's the load duration curve if there's a demand-led operation, so yeah, no pool intelligence at all. And in blue and yellow, there are the the peak power optimized operations with 200-liter storage in blue and 400-liter storage in yellow. And what you can see is that we are able to shave the peaks by 80% with the 200-liter storage, and the 400-liter storage only marginally contributes to more peak shaving. So in the end, the 200-liter storage will be enough to reach a lot of peak shaving. Yeah, these were 3 examples for the saving potentials we calculated, and we did this offline with perfect foresight, but soon the bedbook will go live, and we also want to operate it online. And for this purpose, we set up a toolchain at RWTH, which is connected to gridX via the API. So we get current measurements from gridX, and we also get a weather forecast, store it all in our database, and then conduct the forecasts with the model I showed for wind, for PV, for the electricity demand, for the heating demand, put these forecasts in our energy optimization tool, and then calculate the schedules for the next day. And from these schedules, we derive operational constraint and send them back to gridX again via our RWTH database. And we performed some tests with it, and I will hand over to Emmeline now in order to show the results of our online tests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. My name is Emmeline George. I'm an energy management specialist here at gridX. And as Sarah mentioned, we're now going to see how together we managed to move from offline simulations to online simulations. We're going to go through the set of control methods we considered, how we enable the communication between the different partners. We will go through the simulation results and conclude with our next steps. So, as Sarah just explained, there are different kinds of algorithms. One of them are forecast-based control methods. Those methods consist in solving an optimization problem whose objective function is directly linked to the use case you want to achieve. For example, peak shaving, maximization of self-consumption, and so on. Such a complex algorithm take into input different parameters, including forecast, the use case, and the state of the different systems you're controlling, and gives you as an output a schedule for each of the system with different time step, for example, every 15 minutes over a forecast horizon of, for example, 24 hours. And it's a schedule of the power use of each of the appliances. Those algorithms have a lot of advantages in that they're very flexible to handle multi-objectives. They have an ability to anticipate into the future. But of course, their accuracy is strongly dependent on the accuracy of the forecast that are used, and it is kind of hard to go below a 15 minutes time step. In addition, they have relatively high computational costs, which can make it difficult to run on a local hardware. On the other hand, there are also a different algorithm, which are so-called rule-based control algorithm. Those algorithms rely on the definition of a set of rules, depending on the use case. So those algorithms take as an input the parameters regarding the use case, the different rules you define for those use cases. For example, if we want to maximize self-consumption, a simple example would be if there is surplus production, we are then charging, for example, an available battery or an EV charging or an electric vehicle. And we also take into account the real-time measurements. Those algorithms give you as an output a real-time set point to apply to each appliance and, for example, with a 2-second time step. So you can see that from the profile that was provided initially by the forecast-based algorithm, which, for example, anticipated a constant power level over a 15 minutes time period, you can see that if you look into, let's say, the real-time operation, the profile is actually much more dynamic due to, of course, the variability of the renewable production, but also the dynamic load demand. So those rule-based control algorithms have the advantage of being quite robust, have very low computational costs, and be fast and reactive. Unfortunately, they're kind of blind to the future, and due to the complexity to define all the set of rules required, they can be more limited in the supported use cases. So what we did here for the bedpool setup is a cascaded control approach where we really combine the two kinds of algorithms together. So you've already seen this with Sarah. The RWTH has set up a very advanced energy optimization tool that actually communicates with our GridX cloud and in turn with our local grid box, the local hardware, in order to provide us with the schedule that they can compute. Then locally, we, GridX, operate with our energy management system all the electricity-related assets, such as EV charging station, batteries, and so on. And a third partner, XNet, operates all the heat-related systems, such as the different heat pumps. So really the key to enable the communication between all three partners is to have a reliable and flexible API. And our API, for the purpose of controlling, offers 3 different endpoints. The first one is the inventory endpoint. This enables everyone to know what is the list of available systems to control. So we can get the list of systems, we can know the model, the manufacturer, the serial number, for example, for a battery. We also have a flexibility endpoint, which then enables us to get the state of an individual system. So, for example, the latest measurement update, whether this appliance is ready for control or not. And then finally, the third endpoint is the constraint endpoint, which is really the enabler for the control of the device. For example, through this endpoint, the university can provide us with operating constraints, for example, minimizing or limiting the minimum and maximum power or energy level acceptable for the battery. And we, in turn, can also use this endpoint to set direct power set points to the different appliances. So what does this look like? Here are some examples of responses we get to the requests to our API. This is a RESTful API, and you get this example of request and answer. So for the inventory, in this case, we can see that we are getting an EV charging station. And from the flexibility endpoint, we can deduct that the current active power for this EV charging station is around 7 kilowatts. This flexibility or this EV charging station should operate between 1.4 and roughly 7.4 kilowatt. But now maybe the university with their advanced schedule, has found out that the maximum active power should be limited to 5 kilowatt because of a shortage of electricity in the microgrid, for example. They can therefore inform us of this by setting a constraint of maximum active power of 5 kilowatt so that we can, in real time, adjust the active power consumed by the EV charging station. So we really wanted to get as close as what it will be when the district comes live. And so we moved from strictly offline simulation to online simulation by actually simulating different systems on one of our grid box. We simulated EVs, battery, PV, and wind, and we had 2-second real data resolution, and the university was using 15 minutes forecast. We simulated 2 different days, one day with a very high electricity generation and one day with a lower electricity generation. You can see the profiles here for the wind and for the PV production for those 2 days, and here below the electricity demand by the households in the district for the 2 days, and similarly for the EV. Our cascaded EMS was able to optimize for 3 different objectives: the maximization of self-consumption, the reduction of cost and of emissions, and also the management of peaks. We distinguish 2 different kinds of peaks: the injection peak, so when there's really a surplus of renewable and we're injecting a lot of power back into the grid, and then also the peak shaving for demand, when the demand generates peak on the grid. And here are the first simulation results. The first day was the day with high generation, and we can compare here the results of 2 different algorithms. In light gray, you can see what a blind algorithm just trying to maximize the self-consumption would result in. And in green, the result was our cascaded EMS. So in light gray, we can see that there is quite a bit of power that is being exported to the grid or fed into the grid. And that by using this cascaded control, we're able to smooth this and have a much more reduced grid feed-in. The maximum power feed-in was reduced by 34%. How did we do this? By optimizing differently the state of charge and power use of the battery. So rather than charging it immediately as soon as we had available surplus power, we rather waited and charged more continuously throughout the day. This in turn resulted in a 7% cost reduction. For the second day, which was a day with low generation, our objective for that day was, of course, to make the most out of the available generation, but also to minimize our impact when getting power from the electricity grid. And so again, in gray, you can see the results we were obtaining with a simple self-consumption optimizer, whereas in purple here are the results with the cascaded EMS. And you can see that with the cascaded EMS, we managed to reduce the peak demand by up to 20%. Again, by optimizing the state of charge of the battery differently. So instead of discharging entirely overnight when we had no renewable production, we were actually slowly discharging throughout the day in order to be able to share the morning peak demand and the evening peak demand by up to 20%. In turn, we also reduced the cost by up to 4% for this simulation. The results we present here are, of course, highly dependent on the assumptions we took, and of course also on the different electricity tariff we considered. So in those simulations, we really combine the best of both worlds. First, the robustness of a rule-based system, and the smartness and ability to anticipate of the forecast-based system. And this cascaded control is now tested and ready for rollout. So our next steps will be to scale it up by including the heating systems with the third project partner, XNet, to go live in Bedburg by the end of 2021, and to bring, of course, other districts live. With this, I would like to conclude our talk and open the floor to your questions for all 3 speakers. Thank you for your attention.
And then the next question, what prediction model is used for our forecast-based EMS systems? I think this is a question both for you two.
Yes, Sarah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So we get the actual weather forecasts, and then we calculate the PV and wind production in a deterministic way. So we know the solar irradiation, we know the wind speed which is forecasted, and we can do physical simulations about what electricity generation is to expect with these values. And for the electricity and for the EV and domestic hot water profiles, we will start with the stochastic model I showed, and the more data we get from that book, the more we will be able to learn how to improve this distribution. So we learn when people will be at home or when people will plug in their EVs, and then we will be able to improve the probabilities and use the stochastic models for this part.
Then I think we can jump over to the next questions. When do you expect the first real-life trials? So we are currently actually in the planning phase for the commissioning of the quarter from our perspective. That means the integration or installation of the grid box in the first quarter, the bedbook quarter that we just showed. As per now, it's currently scheduled for November. And we strongly hope that we will able to keep this timeline with all our partners. Then the next question: what do you need XNet for? Couldn't the grid box include the heating systems as well? That is actually true. Our system would be able to also control the heating systems. But our algorithm isn't yet optimized for the heating, the control of the heating systems and storage system present in the quarter. Therefore, XNet is a good partner to kind of close the experience, the lack of experience in this area that we are also building up at the moment. Then the next question: how long is the forecast horizon?
Yeah, the forecast horizon depends a little bit on the data we get from the weather forecasts. We get data for the next week. We get it for the next day in a 30 minutes resolution, for the next 3 days, I think, in an hourly resolution. And for the days after it, I think it's a 3-hour resolution. And then we conduct our optimizations for 3 days in order to shift demands properly also over the days. But we send the constraints to GridX only for the next 24 hours. And they will use, I think, only the control constraints only for the next 15 minutes, because after the next 15 minutes, we conduct our simulation again and update the values. We just send them for the next 24 hours, when there might be a data lag or something else, that there's a fallback option. But we conduct the simulations for 3 days, send it for 1 day, and update it every 15 minutes.
I hope that covers your question. Coming to the next one, what are the conditions that have to be met to build a scalable quarter energy management system that can be used in different districts in the future? Perhaps, Emily, you could answer this question or give some insight there.
Sure. I would say one very important step is to actually be able to cover as many use cases as possible, so that, depending on the needs and the, let's say, optimal use case for each district, we're able to cover them. And this also goes through the fact of having a very flexible energy management system, but also API to make sure that we can really enable the communication with all the systems and with all the potential partners in the different districts as efficiently as possible. Sarah, maybe you also want to add something? Okay.
Perfect. I think that goes a little bit also into the next question. What kind of communication channels or protocols are used to control or to connect to the individual systems, like, for example, the PV systems or battery systems? So it depends on the kind of manufacturer. The strength we see on our side is that we use non-proprietary protocols, or we aren't linked or limited to certain protocols, but we try to be as flexible as possible, having an own integration team on our side to integrate as many different devices of as many different manufacturers as possible. Still, there are, of course, preferences, like, for example, the TCP/IP protocol that would make it more easy. The second thing is, of course, that all registers, all communication, or the technical documentation of the devices is available. That also goes into the scalability aspect, of course, because whenever there's a different device that has to be integrated at a new location, for example, PV unit or a charging station, we need to first evaluate it, if it isn't integrated already, for its capability to be integrated into the system. That means, of course, receiving control commands and, of course, being allowed to monitor it within the scope of the smart district, in this case, as an example. And then, of course, if the controllability is in line with the modules, the use cases that we want to apply to it. So this is something that first has to be evaluated. The same can be said about the second question here. How quick and how reliable are these communications? They also depend very much on the communication interfaces, both the protocols and, of course, the software, the hardware itself, and the connection, the communication connections that we have to these devices. I sadly cannot give there a general answer. I would be very happy if I could. From that on, jumping to the next question, is gridX able to use the park of DERs as a variable? In other words, does the system make suggestions which hardware should be added to achieve optimization targets? As I understand correctly, you're asking if our system could give suggestions for specific kinds of DERs to be added to the system to reach a higher level of optimization. I'm not aware that our system is able to do that yet. Perhaps you two can give some additional information here.
Yeah, sure. That's right. So we are currently not yet able to advise a specific system. Of course, we can determine an optimal size, but it really depends also on the use case that we're considering. And maybe, Sarah, you can elaborate on this as well with your tool. So, because I think your tool also enables the sizing, right, of the systems.
Yeah.
Different use cases.
Yeah, we also enable the sizing, so we can determine optimal sizes, but they are like highly dependent on which boundaries we set. So do we just optimize a house, or do we look at the whole district or at the 3 districts together? So it's really dependent on this.
Like, from what I understand, if you're interested to incorporate, for example, a battery at a location, the RWT House tool would be able to determine how much of a benefit could be able to be achieved from it from a performance perspective. I hope that covered this question. If not, please specify it a bit more. Otherwise, for now, I will jump over to the next question, if that's fine. Is there a communication broadcast or bus, or is it individual links? Sadly, I myself am not able to answer that question. I would be very happy to hand it along to some of our technical specialists in the integration team that could delve there a little bit further into it. Now, could you walk us through the control of dynamics of when the grid box or any part of the simulation parts becomes unreachable? Maybe you could take over this one.
So our grid box can actually operate offline. So if we lose the communication with the algorithm from the university, not only have we initially stored the constraints that they have sent us also locally. So the grid box, because of the direct connection to the local hardware and the local systems, enables us to continue operating. Of course, during that time, the dashboards won't be available for the end users or for the district operator. However, all the data is also stored locally on the grid box, and then as soon as the connection is available, again, pushed back so that we can do a backfill and the data are again accessible as well. I hope this answers the question as well.
If yes, I think we can move over to the next one, if one is available. But I think that was the last one indeed. So if you have any more questions, we can wait a little while. I think another few minutes until it fills up. For now, I want to thank very much my two presenters, Sarah Hen and Emmeline George. It has been a pleasure to present this very interesting topic to you, and we are also in the future very happy to update you further about the current status within the Smart Part project, and of course the future simulations that we will conduct here. The next iteration of them will actually include the heating side within the district Bedburg together now not only with the RWTH, but also XNet to give a more rounded image of the capacity within the quarter of performance optimization, and of course take both sides thereby into account, the heating side and the electrical side. Regarding the timeline there, we are currently running all preparations and hope to give you a first insight into them in the first quarter of next year. Now, with that being said, and no further questions coming in, I think we can slowly come to a stop here. Again, it has been a pleasure. And in advance, I wish you all a great weekend and a great rest of the day. Goodbye.